Hello, I'm James Aw, and I'm here to talk to you today about Tandem Connect, which is a fairly new product released last December that helps you connect uh, external systems and data to a Tandem digital twin. So let's dive in. First, we have to have the legalese in front. This basically just says that I may say things that are speculative, and you shouldn't base any purchasing decisions on that. You've all seen these legalese before. Okay, so the first thing is just defining Tandem itself. So you might already know about what Tandem does, and maybe you don't. But Tandem's been out for about 4 years now, and it helps you create a digital twin of a building in very simple terms. So it allows you to import the BIM data to use as context for the twin. It allows you to classify assets, which then gives you the ability to make custom properties or schema that is attached to those objects, things like maybe serial number or warranty date, those types of things. It allows you to connect to IoT streams so that you can get live data, from the physical space, things like heat and humidity and occupancy and those types of things. And then create visual reports and dashboards that help you, see what's going on. So, the heat map that's shown in the picture is one example showing you where the hot zones are currently. But there's all kinds of dashboards that you can use to um, visualize and surface the data that is in the twin. And there's a lot more, but this is not a class on Tandem itself. This is a class on Tandem Connect to show you how to get all that data into the twin. Okay, so as I just said, on the right-hand side is Tandem that gives you the kind of the digital context of that physical space, the real world physical space. But you have all these systems on the left-hand side that are on-site in the real world grabbing data. So you have things like smart meters and IoT devices and building management systems. And then those are, sensors that are sending data in about what's really happening in the physical world. And you've also got systems that owners and operators for the building use to manage the building, things like maintenance management systems and space planning. Those things have to interact with the twin as well. So there's a lot of things that you would want to integrate in order to make the twin purposeful for gaining insight and understanding about what's happening in the physical world for that building. Now, when we started Tandem 4 years ago, I immediately tried to do some of those integrations, and it was a lot of work. So the three that I started with, you can see in this custom app that I built. I did Robin, which is a room reservation system. So it's how you book conference rooms at Autodesk. VergeSense, which is an occupancy sensor, tells you how many people are actually in the room. And Maximo, which some of you might know, is a long-term product from IBM that does maintenance management. So I just did a quick integration. I didn't even do a full, full-featured integration, but a basic integration. And I had to build my own custom application. I had to, call all those APIs myself. It was a lot of work, a lot of custom code. Took me, a couple months. And you can see from the address bar in my custom app that I never even published it to the cloud. I just ran all that locally. So if I really wanted to do a real app like that, I'd also have to worry about deploying it to the cloud and scaling and all that fun stuff. So if you try to do these integrations with just the API, you can, and you have full control over the raw Tandem data API to do that. But you also take on a lot of other burdens that a professional developer needs to do. So that's why we created Tandem Connect, so that you didn't have to be a professional developer to make some of these integrations, and it will handle all of that cloud deployment for you, so that you just have to worry about connecting data from one system to another, deploying it to the cloud with the push of a button, and Tandem Connect takes care of the rest. So we'll see some examples of that coming up. All right, so here's the really super high level. Tandem Connect is an integration platform as a service. So the key there is that it does all the work of existing in the cloud and scaling and being secure and all those things that you would normally have to build yourself. It's doing that as a service. And the way it works is you create these things called pipelines, and basically a stream of data that goes from one service to another. And along the way, you can insert little bits of code. We'll see some examples of that. That either add some logic or transform the data in some way before it goes to the next system. And you build these little data pipelines just by dragging and dropping the predefined plugins. And there's even a library of finished solutions that you can copy as a template. So as an example, if you were going to do the VergeSense pipeline that shows you occupancy of the rooms, like I'm going to show in an upcoming example, that pipeline's already built, and you just drag it down from the library, change a few of the configuration variables that are specific to your case, and you're off and running. So some cases you have to build a pipeline, some cases you just have to copy the template down. So just to give you an idea of how it's all kind of put together, on the top here we have Tandem, which is where most of the data is stored long-term. That's in the twin. So Tandem is the twin itself and all the data associated with it. And then you use Tandem Connect to bring in these other systems that we've been talking about, like room booking systems, the weather, maintenance management, those types of things. There's two versions of Tandem Connect. One that runs in the cloud. So everything, you push a button and it deploys to the cloud and runs. But there are some cases where you have to run it at the edge, so physically in that building. And that usually happens when you have something like a building management system that you have to connect to, because they are not on the internet. So there's no way to communicate with them unless you have something running on a physical machine at the site. So usually that's just a little cheap Linux box that you plug into network, and we'll see an example of that as well. So two forms of it. Outpost is the one that runs at the edge, and just normal Tandem Connect runs in the cloud. But the mechanisms to build those pipelines, they're all the same. It's just a difference between hitting deploy to Outpost or deploy to the cloud. We've talked about this a lot already, but just these are the types of systems that you would want to connect to, and there's lots of them. So even just within maintenance management, there's probably 10 different companies that provide that feature. So you should be able to pull a plugin for that specific system from the library and plug it into your pipeline and have it connect to Tandem. All right, so let's dive into a specific example. So kind of the hello world of Tandem Connect is this weather pipeline that we built. So it's fairly simple. We're going to walk through it in a video on the next slide. But just to give you an idea what happens, it pings a weather service through this generic HTTP connector. So it just calls the weather services REST API, gets back the data, converts it slightly because it needs to be in a slightly different format, and then pushes it into Tandem, and then it will show up in a custom field in Tandem itself. So it will just keep pumping that. And these scheduled data things you can set to run once, run every hour, every 5 minutes, whatever it takes. So it would update the temperature based on that schedule. All right, I'm going to run this video and just kind of talk about it. The details aren't really important. I just want to give you an idea of how these pipelines get built. So in this case, we're building the hello weather one that we just talked about. we have to have something to kick off the process. So we add this scheduled data stream, and we're going to say it runs every 30 minutes, starting at some date in the future. And it's just going to run continuously and never stop. Okay, now we need to call the weather service. So we add a new simple HTTP service, which just all it wants is a URL for a REST API. And we're going to paste that in there. It calls open weather, and we have to fix the authorization. So that you would have had to set up by going to open weather and getting the key. But once you have it, you just pop it into this plugin node, and it'll call the service and authenticate everything and get the data back. You know, a converter is what we just added, and it's a very, it's your opportunity to add a little bit of code. So if you need some code, you write it in JavaScript and just add it here. What we're doing in this thing is just mapping data. So the weather came in as a certain field name, but it has a different field name in Tandem. So we just have to do a little data mapping so that the values get sent across to the right property name in Tandem. You can also do other things though, like, you know, suppose the weather came in Celsius and you wanted it to be in Tandem as Fahrenheit. You could do the conversion in that little block of code. Okay, then the Tandem connector is what gets the data written back to Tandem itself. And all we did there was just give it the facility ID that it needs to go to. And then it went by already, but we pushed the save and deploy button. That pushes it to the cloud. And it doesn't start until it kicks off. So we had set it at every 30 minutes, but if we don't want to wait, you can open up that schedule thing and hit sync now, and it will kick it off. So there we got the weather. You can inspect the logs and see the data coming through. And then back in Tandem, we're just going to map that incoming data to a field, a parameter in Tandem itself. And so this is the mapping process that says incoming data coming from that stream gets mapped to this long-term storage location. And you can see the temperature at the bottom got pushed in. And that will just keep updating every half hour now that that pipeline is deployed. All right, so that's the kind of like the hello world, the simplest way to get a pipeline up and running and see data coming in. That is available at this link down here. So it will bring up this page, and it will walk you through a step-by-step process of building that pipeline. So that's probably the best way to get started and understand what's going on. Okay, some more interesting demos that we did ourselves. So this is a demo of what I'm based in San Francisco in the Autodesk office there. And I instrumented that building. We had a model, so we made a twin of it and tried to hook up everything we could. So the first thing is the BACnet devices. So if you don't know what BACnet is, it's a protocol for reading the information that goes through the building management system. So things like the temperature sensors in the building, CO2, humidity, there's all these sensors that are in all of the rooms and spaces. And they report back to the building management system through some protocol called BACnet, which runs on the network, but not on the internet. So it's on the private network of the building, usually on the subnet that's very kind of secured and walled off. So you have to somehow get that data, tap into that system, and then push it out to the internet so that it can get to Tandem. Okay, so there's a very simple pipeline. It just does this auto discovery of the BACnet devices. It pings the network and finds them all. It automatically creates a stream in Tandem. The stream is what records all of the time series data coming in from those, so you can see the changes over time. So there's one BACnet node that you just have to configure with some information about where that BACnet router is on the network. There's a little bit of code to parse out the name and then use that name and device ID as the name of the stream in Tandem, so you can match them up. And then this just, the last one is what sends the data into a Tandem stream. So the result is what you get on this previous page. So you get all of these streams that are collecting data, and they keep track of it over time. And then they tell you anomalies. So you can set thresholds to say, you know, if it's below or above a certain number, then trigger some action. Okay, so that's an interesting example. And this is a case where it's using Outpost. So I mentioned that earlier, that it can run, these pipelines can run in the cloud or on Outpost, which is on a physical device in the building. So this little tiny box with this sticky label on it, sticky note on it, is a little Linux box that runs Outpost on it and is then plugged in and listening to the backnet traffic on the network. This is in a secure server room, and that's the way that these setups are usually going to be, because you're kind of tapping into the building network. So they have to be, you know, kind of securely added to the network. So that was the hardest part of this whole process, is I had to negotiate with our IT department at Autodesk for a couple of months to let them, you know, put this random box on there. They had to make sure it was secure and wasn't doing anything fishy. So you know, that'll be the hardest part, but actually setting it up and getting it to run, it was a couple minutes. I just dragged down the template of that pipeline, hit sync, it found all the devices, created them all, created a stream in Tandem, and started pumping data through. So it really cuts down the time once you get, you know, the technical part of it is pretty easy. It's the getting it to exist on the network that's the hard part. And then two other systems I hooked up. So I hooked up Robin, which is our room reservation system, where you book rooms and desks. And I hooked up VergeSense, which is an occupancy sensor. So it tells you how many physical bodies are actually in the room at a given time. And the way you do this is you just like we saw in the weather example, you set up a custom parameter in Tandem, and you assign it to a classification of the objects. In this case, we said all meeting rooms get this VergeSense, or sorry, Robin and VergeSense data. And we create new properties to hold those values that are going to come in from those other systems. And so here's an example. Once the pipeline is set up, it's pumping data into these variables that keep track of Robin and VergeSense data. And you'll see the color coding. So you notice the green and the purple and the pink. That's because I made a visual report for it. So if I click on the settings panel for the filter panel, settings box for the filter panel, I can add new properties that it should keep track of and then assign a color to them. So once I do that, then in this view, it will color them by the status. So all the green ones are available, all the purple ones are in use, and the pink one is booked. So it's very easy to create a report instantly just from that data that came in from the other system. I didn't have to write any extra code to make that data interesting. So a couple pipelines that supported that. So there's one that just does the initialization from the system. So initially there's no data in Tandem for those rooms from what's in the Robin system. So I wrote one pipeline that it only needs to run one time. It pings the Robin system, crawls through all of the rooms that are registered, and then creates a mapping in Tandem, and also puts a link to the photo of the room in case they want to see what the meeting room looks like, and occupancy, so you know how many people it fits. So that's a one-time initialization. It doesn't have to do with the status. That's just a property of the room that is going to be interesting over on the Tandem side. And then we have the ones that update regularly. So if you look on the left-hand side, this one kicks off every 30 minutes. It has this filter on here because I only care about working hours. So it basically says if it's Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., then keep going, otherwise stop. So it's only going to do it during working hours. Then it finds all the rooms in Tandem, preps a call to get the status of that room in Robin. Then it calls Robin, gets that, and then prepares the data, probably maps the variables, and then writes it back to Tandem. So that runs every half hour, updates the status of the room according to the Robin system. Same thing for VergeSense. It's very similar pipeline. So in both cases, we're getting the status from these two different systems. Once we do that, that allows us to do some kind of interesting stuff. So I ran into this condition where I was noticing the room would be in use, but VergeSense would tell me nobody was there. So basically somebody had booked the room and never showed up. Or it could be other conditions like, the room only holds 5 people and there's 10 people in it. That could be useful information to, figure out why the room is too hot. Well, there's too many people in it. So there's all kinds of things you can do now when you start combining the data coming in from these other systems. So as a very simple example, I wrote this pipeline that I call the room police. And of course, I would never do this for real. I wouldn't rat on people. But what it does is it checks based on a couple rules. It says, if the room's booked and no one's there, then somebody, wasn't very nice about the room booking, or it's available, but people are, in Robin, it says it's available, but VergeSense tells you there's people in it. Somebody just is squatting in it without actually reserving it. So there's all kinds of those types of rules. And so what I do is I just have a little bit of code in there that checks those variables and then outputs to Slack. So it goes to a Slack channel, and you can see on the left, I have a little police icon. Once again, we don't do this. This is just a test to show you a simple example. But it's really easy when you have access to the data from those multiple systems. You can just add a little bit of logic and do something interesting. All right, so now an Airtable demo. So this represents a workflow of somebody that is, so far we've seen just connecting systems and pulling in data from those other systems and mashing it up inside the twin. But you can also use Tandem Connect to connect the workflows from kind of custom built apps. So if you don't know what Airtable is, it's a really flexible system. We'll see it in a second when I do the demo. That lets you build little tables of data, forms that operate on that data. It's got automation, like when you submit a form, it will kick in some action. So you can basically build a really simple little app. So imagine somebody in the field with their iPad, and they've got this work order request, and they're walking around and they just fill in a couple details about what needs maintenance, hit the form, and then it generates a report back in Tandem and shows you, visually, helps you plan. Okay, well, now I know where this thing is. It's on the roof, and I need to make a plan for getting that thing fixed. So that type of workflow. So we have 2 different examples here of different pipelines and ways to approach it, just for illustrative purposes. So the first one is pretty straightforward. It just says once every hour, go read all of the work orders and then match them up and update the data in Tandem. So once an hour, it would get refreshed with anything that had changed in the work order system. And so just to see how that works, let's go to Airtable. And you can see this is my simple table that represents work orders. I don't have anything for 1000 asset number 1001 yet, so we'll add that. So normally in the field, so this is kind of behind the scenes of Airtable, but the person with the iPad in the field would just get this, and they might fill it in like, fan on AC unit, and replace. put in the asset ID. A real workflow would have a better way of looking this up, but for now, let's type it in, give it a priority. And a photo. So remember, I'm representing that I'm out in the field on physical site doing this. And then submit it. And then, should show up now in Tandem. If I go over to Tandem itself, we should see this value. Oh no, I have to kick it off first because it's set to run every hour, so it won't run until I tell it to. So I can manually say start it now, and now data will start flowing through. And if I go back to Tandem, you can see it. It added that information that we just pushed through. So it got updated as soon as the pipeline executed. Okay. And then the other thing it did is it sent me an email. So sent me an email confirming that that was the work order that I submitted. Okay. And there's another version of that. So the previous one we said we'll just do it every hour. But there's lots of flexibility in the way you build these pipelines. So in this case, we use a thing called the HTTP gateway that gets a webhook event from Airtable. So every time a record changes in Airtable, it calls the webhook that is the start of this pipeline, kicks off the rest of the pipeline. So in that case, if this one was running, we would change a record in the work order system, and it would just immediately kick off. So there's lots of ways to do it. This one happens to be a little bit more complex because you have to get a digital SSL certificate to run that webhook. But we're looking into ways to make that easier. But this one's a little bit more complex than the other one. But the point is there's lots of flexibility about how you construct these. All right, so that's it. We have lots of examples that we could walk through, but hopefully those few give you an idea of how things work. You have to have Tandem itself to make this interesting. So kind of the first step is to get used to setting up a digital twin with Tandem. And then Tandem Connect is how we then start pulling all that data in. So lots of resources to do that. Everything's free to start. So Tandem itself is free up to a certain level, certainly plenty room to experiment and trial it. And Tandem Connect is free for a sandbox account, which means you can run those pipelines and they will stay deployed for 12 hours and then they automatically undeploy. So it's very good for trying it out, testing it, see if it works. And then if you want it to run continuously, then you have to upgrade to a paid account. And then I want to reference the Tandem Data API. So in Tandem Connect, we kind of wrap this API so that you don't have to know how to do it directly. But like I said, when I did those early integrations and I did all of the programming myself, you can just you can write your own custom code that does it. So there's Jan Liska is giving a class on that at DevCon as well, on the details of the Tandem Data API and embedding the viewer if you wanted to do that. And there's references here. So that's it. If we were live, I would take questions, but that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.